The Community Enterprise Clinic is a business law clinic that represents nonprofit organizations and social entrepreneurs. We work with organizations based in Durham, across the Triangle, and throughout North Carolina. So we handle all kinds of things for our clients. We'll work with really small community-based organizations that are forming an organization for the first time, so helping them incorporate as a nonprofit or as a business, getting tax exemption. We'll work with more established organizations, providing general corporate counsel and advice. We'll work with organizations on transactions like building or preserving affordable housing, or on economic development projects in low wealth communities. And we'll also work with organizations on public policy matters. I teach the seminar, I help identify our cases, and then assign those cases, working with students to figure out what kinds of things are they wanting to do in the clinic, and as best as possible match up what our clients need with what students want to do. And then every week, students and I meet individually for feedback meetings and supervision meetings to both have an opportunity to work on assessing where their work is with their cases and how to push that work forward to make sure that we're providing the highest possible client service to our clients. But also, so much of the clinic experience is giving students the opportunity to figure out what kind of lawyer do they want to be and begin to cross this bridge from being a law student to a lawyer. And so a lot of this is in the supervision is about that professional growth and development. Students are eligible to enroll in the Community Enterprise Clinic as a second-year student. The reality is that it does tend to fill up pretty quickly, and so typically it's third-year students that are taking the clinic. Every student in the clinic is typically going to get at the beginning of the semester at least 3 cases. So 2 of those cases are going to be cases that a student would handle primarily on their own, and then a third case is a team case. So I'll tell you a little bit about those cases and how they fit. But before that, just to say that the way I assign cases is at the beginning of the semester, I meet with each student to talk about both kind of what have they done leading up to enrolling in the clinic and where do they see themselves going, both over the rest of their time at the law school, but also into their professional career. And then from that, really try to match students with their interests with the kinds of cases that we have. In terms of the cases, everyone, as I said, is going to get 3 matters early on. The first is what I would consider a small case, and that does not mean that it's unimportant. It just means that it is something that you should be able to start and finish over the course of the semester. So that might be, as an example, working with a community-based organization that's been operating, say, an informal food program, and now they want to incorporate and start a food bank. And so they need help incorporating, getting articles of incorporation, bylaws, setting up their board, and applying for tax exempt status with the IRS. That's the kind of thing that we ought to be able to do over the course of a semester. The second case is one that many of our cases, particularly our bigger transactional cases in affordable housing or economic development, are matters that have been going on for multiple semesters, and you would get a part of that case. So it's a big case. Again, not necessarily more important than your small case. It's just one that's going to last a lot longer, but I'll cut off a slice of it that you can start and finish over the course of a semester. And then the third kind of case that we do is called a legal assessment. So one of the important skills that lawyers really need to have is the capacity to work in teams. And because our other 2 cases are ones that you're going to handle individually, I always want to make sure that you have one opportunity to really practice your collaboration skills, your capacity to work in teams. Also, these are cases that are complex, time intensive, and it'd just be a lot to ask any one person to do. So the legal assessment project is one where we will work over the course of a semester, do a deep dive with a nonprofit corporation and look at their operations and compliance with law, and ultimately make a report to the board of directors about how they're doing Are there places that they need to improve what we call their legal fitness in order to make sure that they're sustainable for the long haul? And it's both an opportunity for students to really get a deep grounding in how corporations work, the opportunity to do pretty sophisticated counseling to a board of directors, and a chance for us as a clinic to help strengthen the nonprofit sector in the Triangle. So those would be the three cases you would typically have. Some things end up finishing up quickly, and then I'd give you another case. Other times that's more than enough to get through the semester. Really two sets of transferable skills. One is just sort of the basic bucket of skills that any lawyer needs. So being able to interview a client, being able to counsel a client, being effective at communicating with clients and with colleagues, really careful drafting. So all those sort of really foundational skills. You have to have great relationship skills. You have to have really effective communication skills. You've got to be able to diagnose legal problems in the context of a business and apply the law and your understanding of the business and the client's sense of what they're trying to achieve in order to get to the end goal. You've got to be able to work effectively with a team. So all those sort of higher order professional skills are also things that you get to work on. And all of those things are transferable when you graduate from the law school, whether you're going into a law firm, you're going to work in a public interest context, into government, or even if you go into business. So even just today, I was texting with two former students, one who graduated 20 years ago and one who graduated 3 years ago. And we were just checking in with each other, seeing how things are going, what are people up to for the summer. One of the alums was telling me about the Red Sox game that they were at yesterday. So, just in general, I think this opportunity to really get to know students and for students to get to know a faculty member in a different kind of way is one of the favorite things I have about teaching in the clinic. The other is this opportunity to see students grow. Every student, when they come into the clinic, whether they admit it or not, is pretty terrified because it is a real responsibility as someone who hasn't even graduated law school yet to know that you're going to be given cases where you are responsible for helping this person solve really important legal problems. There's at least three ways. One is there's a big network now of Duke Law students who are doing affordable housing and community development work in their practice, having taken the clinic. That they got exposed to this area that they didn't know anything about, and students are all over the country in their practice doing this kind of work. So one is this could just become your job. The second is it is a great opportunity to do pro bono if you go to a law firm or a governmental organization and you're looking for the opportunity to really take leadership and demonstrate your capacity, not just to give back, but to manage a client relationship. And one of the things that's special, I think, about the work that we do is for a lot of law firms, it's hard to find lawyers who are ready to do pro bono work that is business law related. And so students come out of the clinic ready to do that kind of work. So you might be working in a corporate and securities group, but you can do a pro bono project where you help a community organization incorporate as a nonprofit corporation. And being able to show your capacity to manage that relationship shows the people you're working with that you're ready to move up in the firm. I think the third way that you can do it is so much of our work is about understanding how organizations work and finding that balance between the law and business to achieve organizational goals. And that kind of work is great work to do as a board member with a nonprofit organization or a social enterprise. So being really directly involved as a board member or some other kind of volunteer where you're not necessarily leveraging your law license per se, as much as your capacity to help with the governance of the organization is another way that you can contribute after graduation.